Cowabunga, everybody. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Midnight Tales video for you guys, and this one is titled 6 Most Disturbing True Summertime Horror Stories, hence why I'm wearing the straw hat and pair of glasses. And I figured since we're still in January, I thought I'd react to something that would probably warm you up a little bit. Okay, that sounds a little weird, but anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road in the bag. Okay, here we go.
This was a few summers ago when I was watching my niece for the afternoon while my brother and his wife were working late.
Okay.
They live in this super old townhouse in England. One of those really narrow, quirky homes with a long garden out back and fences that feel like castle walls.
I know that house that they're living in has probably got some historic history behind it. I don't know if I could stay and live in a townhouse. I'd like to be out in the country somewhere, but if you live in a townhouse, you could just easily walk from your house to, let's say, the post office or the grocery store and then come back with ease.
It was early evening, still bright out, warm enough that we'd left the back door open so a breeze could drift through the house. I was in the kitchen, multitasking between cooking dinner and keeping an eye on my niece as she wandered around with her stuffed bunny, bouncing between the living room and garden. She's always been the curious type, and she especially loved climbing up onto the window ledge in the front dining room to watch people pass by and wave like she was the neighborhood mascot. So while I'm chopping up veggies, I hear her doing her usual sweet little hi and assumed someone with a stroller or a dog was walking past. I glanced over and waved too, not thinking anything of it. A minute or two later, she did it again, this time with more excitement. But something about the tone in her voice made me glance over more deliberately.
Oh, please don't tell me that she's waving at a stranger that came a little bit too close to the house. At that point, I'll be telling this girl to back away from the window.
I could only see the top of someone's head peeking in from below the window, just enough to make out a pair of eyes looking straight into the house. At first, I honestly thought I was imagining it, or maybe it was a neighbor bending down for something. But when I walked over to the window and got a closer look, I realized there was a man crouching there, just staring at us like he had no shame about it. As soon as he saw me, he stood up slowly and locked eyes with me, not blinking, not saying anything. I immediately scooped up my niece, not really sure if I should be furious or scared. Then, without breaking that weird eye contact, he gently knocked on the window, 3 slow, steady taps, and gave this creepy little grin like we were playing some twisted game. I started backing up toward the kitchen while telling him to leave or I'd call the police. That's when I looked around for my phone and realized it wasn't on the table where I'd left it. When I looked back at him, his smile had widened, and I swear it was like he knew my phone was gone. Right then, he disappeared from the window, and seconds later came the loudest, most aggressive pounding on the front door I've ever heard.
Oh, heck no. I'll be wondering where her phone was at. But it seems like this dude don't want to leave. He wants to break in and maybe kidnap that child. I don't know. But at that point, I'll be grabbing a kitchen knife or some other weapon to defend us if that guy decides to break down the door.
Over and over, like he was trying to break it down. My niece started crying from the noise, and I shouted that I was calling the cops, even though I wasn't exactly sure how without my phone. Then I heard this strange laughing, like someone trying to hold it in and failing, and it made my skin crawl. The only reason I wasn't full-on panicking was because this house had a serious front door set up, 3 locks and a deadbolt. So, staying quiet as possible, I shut the curtains in the dining room, then moved to the living room and did the same.
Yeah, he knows you're bluffing, so he's going to keep trying to kick that door. But luckily, if it's got 3 locks and the deadbolt, he ain't getting in.
As soon as those curtains were drawn, the banging stopped. For a moment, everything went completely silent, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd left. I took a few deep breaths and gently set my niece down, who by now had calmed and gone back to playing with her teddy, like nothing had happened. I started searching frantically for my phone, thinking maybe she'd wandered off with it, but it was nowhere in sight. Then I remembered there was a cordless landline tucked behind the lounge chair by the window, so I carefully pulled the curtain back just enough to grab it and peek outside. Nobody on the step, just the empty street. Relieved, I was just about to call someone when I heard my niece say, "Hi again," in that same happy little voice. Except this time, she wasn't near the window. She was looking toward the living room doorway. I turned around, and there he was, inside the house. He was just standing in the entryway, barely lit by the evening sun, his face locked in that same eerie grin as before.
I'll be wondering how in the world did he get in the house? I'll be grabbing that girl and running out the house right about now.
I think I went into some kind of survival mode, because I grabbed my niece so fast, I surprised even myself. As I backed toward the second exit from the room, he started walking toward me, slow, hands behind his back like he was waiting for me to panic. I was fumbling with the locks, hands shaking, trying to keep my eyes on him. I finally got the door open just as he was a few feet away and ran straight into my brother-in-law, who had just gotten home from work. I barely managed to say, "There's someone in the house," before he pushed past me to look. The guy was gone. The only trace was the back door wide open and one muddy footprint on the carpet just inside the kitchen. The police showed up shortly after, and the theory was that he had slipped into the house from the back while I was distracted cooking. As for my phone, we never found it. It's like it just vanished. We're all pretty sure he was the one my niece saw first, and he must have snatched it before circling around to the front to try whatever twisted plan he had in mind. The worst part is, all my info was on that phone.
Oh, Lordy. Well, I hope the police keep on doing their best to try to locate that guy and see if he has your phone, because if all your info's on it, he's going to find out where you live at and find out how old you are and probably harass you more. But I had a feeling that he probably took it, because why else would he be laughing after she kept on saying, "I'm going to be calling the cops"? But this is why, if both her and the little niece of hers was in the house, you should have had the back door locked as well, besides the front. Then that guy wouldn't have not been able to get in, snatch your phone, and keep on tormenting you. But I'm just glad that they're okay and nothing bad happened to them. But let's get to story number 2.
You ever think back on a day that should have been one of your favorite memories, but instead it just left this weird weight on you forever? That's how I feel whenever I remember this one summer afternoon from when I was a kid. There's this spot near my hometown, kind of like a secret oasis, even though everybody knew about it. Big river, an old weir with water tumbling over it, paddle boats, little food stand with overpriced ice cream, all that. On warm days, the whole place would be packed. Kids running around barefoot, old couples in folding chairs, teens sunbathing like they were at a beach in Spain. That place used to be my little paradise, honestly. I must have been around 9 or 10 at the time, old enough to be let loose around the water while my mom chilled with a book on the blanket.
Sounds like a safe piece of paradise, that's for sure. And then you get to chill right next to this little waterfall, relax. You see, something like that I wouldn't mind doing, but if it's crowded like being at a fairgrounds event, then I wouldn't go at all, because you'll be bumping to people nonstop.
I remember that day so clearly because it started out perfect. I was splashing around near the weir, just doing my thing, and I ended up talking to this teenage girl who was hanging around by herself. You know how when you're a kid, anyone older seems impossibly cool? She gave me those vibes. Confident, laid back, kind of big sister energy. We clicked right away. She let me tag along as we explored the riverbank, watching tiny fish dart between rocks, diving underwater, just messing around. I felt lucky to have her attention. We eventually drifted toward a shallower area where a group of other teenage girls were hanging out. One of them was fussing about how cold the water was, and being the little loudmouth I used to be, I muttered something like, "Wow, drama queen much?" Not even that loud, but she heard. And let me tell you, her reaction was instant. She locked eyes with me and waded into the water, shouting at me like I'd insulted her whole family. Before I even understood what was happening, she lunged at me and shoved me underwater. I came up gasping, heart racing, and before I could really even get my bearings, she was in my face again yelling. I could feel my cheeks burn with embarrassment, especially with my new older friend watching. So I pulled this dumb move where I just laughed, like trying to act unbothered. Didn't work. She dunked me again, harder this time. When I came up coughing, she was right there, screaming even louder. And suddenly it wasn't about teasing anymore. Something in her snapped.
Oh boy, yeah, that's what happens when you kind of mummer out something because of what a person was saying. Because a lot of people don't have a good sense of humor. They'll just take it like you insulted them. But it seemed like this person's taking it way too far and might end up accidentally drowning this kid.
Her face looked weirdly blank, like there was no one home behind her eyes. I remember thinking, something is seriously wrong here. And then she grabbed my throat and slammed me under again. This time, it wasn't a scare tactic. She held me down and I panicked. I kicked, scratched, tried to get loose, but it was like fighting a statue. The water got murky with all the movement, and at one point, I couldn't even tell which way was up. It hit me. I might not make it out of this. Right there, surrounded by families eating sandwiches and laughing, I was drowning, and no one even knew. Next thing I knew, I was above water again, sputtering and heaving, with my friend holding on to me while people yelled in all directions. Some of the girls had finally dragged the attacker off me, and she was still screaming like she was possessed. My friend kept apologizing, saying they didn't get what was happening at first and just thought it was roughhousing. Honestly, maybe she didn't get the full extent of it even then. But she did buy me an ice cream afterward and took me out on a paddle boat to help calm me down. I'll always be grateful for that. I didn't tell my mom what happened. I was too ashamed. I felt like I'd brought it on myself somehow, and I didn't want anyone to see how rattled I was. But I didn't go back to that place much after that. That day changed something in me. I lost a chunk of the confidence I had back then, and ever since, I've carried a quiet kind of wariness around people, especially strangers who smile a little too much.
Thank God her friend came in to help her. Everybody thought that it was roughhousing. It wouldn't be considered roughhousing if you saw her body just float lifelessly because that girl got all annoyed by what she said. But I'm glad that she made it up to her by giving her ice cream and riding on the paddle boat. But I would have still told the mom and dad, because then they would have had a lot to say to that girl that was attacking her. Learning how to take things with a grain of salt instead of going haywire and berserk. But I don't blame her for not going back, because I'll be afraid of that girl going there too. It might cause another scene like that again. But hopefully that girl would get a mental evaluation, because if she can't handle people saying something softly behind her back after what she says something, and she got a problem.
Back when I was around 15, I used to hang out with my friend Maddie pretty much every other weekend. She was 2 years younger than me, and we'd just walk around the neighborhood aimlessly in the Texas heat, usually with some kind of frozen treat in hand, those plastic tube ices that always cut up the corners of your mouth. We'd chat about everything and nothing, and being summer, we were usually in shorts and tank tops, just trying not to melt.
To be honest with you, I never got used to eating ices out of them little plastic tube sleeves, because one, they do tend to nick you in the mouth sometimes if you don't cut them good to get the icy out. But I just can't stand the taste of weird flavor ice in my mouth. So that's why during the summer I like ice cream sandwiches better.
It was that kind of quiet suburb where you knew most people by name, or at least by their car. Maddie and I were both friendly kids, maybe a little too friendly looking back on it. One afternoon, we were sitting along the edge of a sidewalk that backed up to this big wooden fence near a highway. Not the smartest place, I know, but it was shaded and breezy there. That's when this beat-up truck towing an empty trailer pulled up beside us. 3 guys were in the cab. The one driving looked like someone's rough-around-the-edges uncle in his 40s, and the 2 in the passenger seats were younger, probably late 20s. The older guy leaned out the window and started talking to us. Casual stuff at first. "What y'all up to? Enjoying your summer?" That kind of thing. I remember catching a weird look on one of the younger guys' faces. He kept glancing around and giving these odd, nervous half-smiles, like he wasn't totally on board with whatever was happening. We tried to play it cool, you know? Smiling politely, but not giving too much away.
Okay, that'll be a little red flag going off in my head. Because if he's kind of like giving a half smile / nervousness look to you, that old man was looking for girls for them dudes to do something naughty with, if you guys know what I mean. Nasty. I don't know. Let's just see what happens next.
I could tell Maddie felt the same way I did, and we kind of exchanged one of those "you good" glances without saying anything. It didn't feel like typical neighbor chit-chat. Then the driver said something that changed everything. He complimented how we looked and asked if we wanted a ride somewhere. That hit like a brick. There were already 3 of them in the truck, so where were we supposed to sit? On their laps? Maddie giggled and told him her dad was on the way to get us, which was a total bluff. I, meanwhile, pulled out my old flip phone, put it to my ear, and started waving like someone was coming toward us from down the road. I didn't even know who I was pretending to talk to. I just needed them to think we had someone looking out for us. That did the trick. The older guy muttered something about having to go. One of the other guys flipped us off for some reason, and they peeled off fast, taking a sharp turn into our neighborhood. We didn't feel safe walking straight home, so we doubled back, cut through someone's side yard, and hid behind a bush in our friend Katie's backyard. She and her family were on vacation. After lying low for a bit, we snuck back home the long way, taking every hidden shortcut we could think of. We sat inside for a while, trying to act like everything was normal. But then, like absolute idiots, we decided to head back out again. This time, though, we brought Max, my 90-pound German Shepherd who looked like he belonged in a police K9 unit. We weren't even halfway down the street when we saw that truck again. Only now they were parked in front of a neighbor's house, loading yard waste onto the trailer like they were doing landscaping or something. That's probably what their occupation is, but they're really creepy guys. And I had a feeling that if they didn't do something, they were probably going to sit on them younger guys' laps and probably have their way with them, you know. That's why one of them flipped him off, because he was mad that he wasn't going to get a girl to sit with him. Thankfully, their little stunt of one of their dads was coming to pick them up worked for a while. And you really had to walk out at the safety of a friend's house, and they're going to see you again. Probably try to offer you a ride again, but luckily they're bringing a dog, so that dog will probably deter them even more. One of the guys spotted us walking Max. I knew it. And immediately whispered something to the older guy, who turned and stared. I didn't even hesitate. We spun around and booked it back to my place. That time we stayed home for good, parked by the living room window, peeking through the blinds like paranoid spies. My cousins and their friends were skateboarding in the driveway, which I think actually helped. Maybe seeing a group of rowdy teenage boys out front made those guys think twice about whatever plan they might have had. Looking back now, I still get goosebumps thinking about how that could have ended differently. We never talked in detail about how uncomfortable we both were, but we knew. After that day, Max came with us everywhere, no exceptions. It's wild how close we probably came to something awful, and how easy it was to miss the signs at first. I learned a lot that summer, and none of it had to do with popsicles or sunshine.
Thank God you did the right thing and turned around, because if you guys kept on going, you never know what them dudes would have done to you. Because it's kind of suspicious once they saw you, they start whispering to each other. Probably forming a plan. But since you gals went back home and your older boy cousins were out there skating, they probably would have deterred them, like you said, to not stop. But I'm just glad that they're okay, and they're now bringing their dog Max with them every time they walk. That's a good idea, because it'll help avoid situations like this again.
When I was 12, summers felt endless and brutally hot. I grew up in a desert town where it wasn't unusual for the temperature to hit 120 degrees.
I can see why you feel like it's summer all the time, because if you're living in a desert climate area, especially like in Arizona or Nevada, I know it would definitely get hot over there, especially over 100 degrees. I wouldn't be able to stand it there. I like the more colder temperatures better.
So my days mostly revolved around staying inside, making weird snack combos, watching cable TV, and rearranging my baseball cards for the millionth time. My mom worked full-time, which meant I had the house to myself most days. And at the time, I actually enjoyed the peace. No school, no chores if I was quick about it, just me, the couch, and whatever I felt like doing. That summer started out like heaven. And then things got weird. About halfway through July, right around lunchtime, the house phone started ringing at almost the exact same time every day, usually a few minutes past noon. The first couple of times I picked up and said hello. There was no answer, just total silence. At first, I figured it was a telemarketer or maybe a bad connection, so I just hung up. But then it kept happening. Day after day, same time, same silence. Eventually, I stopped saying anything at all when I answered. I'd just lift the receiver, hold my breath, and listen. Every once in a while, I could hear what sounded like a TV playing faintly in the background, or maybe someone breathing very lightly. But mostly, nothing.
That's one thing about answering phones nowadays, is that you always get these weird calls that you don't know who they are. And when you answer to see what they want, it's either static, like coming from a TV, or nobody's talking at all. It's just silent. And then when they do answer, be like, hello, I'm calling to tell you about life insurance benefits or Medicare news, or people asking for donations, which you know automatically that would be a scam.
No clicks, no static, just this eerie, patient kind of stillness. I started thinking maybe it was a kid from school messing with me, but the fact that it happened every day, so precisely, started to get under my skin. This was before smartphones or caller ID, so there wasn't much I could do to figure out who it was. And honestly, I kind of made it a little game. Some detective fantasy where I'd crack the case like I was starring in my own low-budget mystery movie. I didn't tell my mom about it. There wasn't much to tell anyway. How do you explain that silence is calling you every day at 12:15? Still, I couldn't help but feel tense every time the clock ticked past noon. I'd hover near the phone, daring it to ring, wondering if today would be the day something different would happen.
I wouldn't be making no game out of this, but if the same person keeps calling at the same time every day, I'll just answer it, and if nobody don't say nothing, hang it up. That's all you gotta do. Don't just keep sitting there waiting for somebody to say something.
But it never did. I even started picking up and holding the phone for a few minutes without saying a word, just waiting, just hoping I'd catch something. Eventually, frustration took over. I wasn't scared, just pissed. Who does that? What's the point? After about 7 weeks of this weird ritual, I finally lost it.
I'll be losing it too because it seems like it's just people that don't have a life and they just want to bug the heck out of people by prank calling you nonstop. And if it had caller ID, you could just write down the number and get the sheriff's department to trace it for you. Or you could just block the number if you had caller ID.
When the call came in and I heard that familiar silence, I snapped. I let loose on whoever was on the other end, shouting into the phone, demanding answers, throwing out every insult my 12-year-old brain could come up with. I still remember looking at the microwave clock mid-rant. It read 12:15 exactly, and it just made me angrier. I ended the call with something like, "What kind of loser calls someone every day just to say nothing? Get a life, freak." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I didn't mean to go off like that, but I couldn't help it. It had been building up for weeks. What shocked me most, though, was that after that call, it stopped. No ring the next day, or the day after that. A full week passed, and the silence I'd been dreading somehow turned into the silence I was grateful for. Eventually, summer ended, and I went back to school. Life picked up. Assignments, lunchroom drama, the usual, and I kind of forgot about it. I figured I scared them off, whoever they were. Part of me was still curious, but I didn't dwell on it until one Saturday. The weather had finally cooled down enough to go outside without feeling like I was walking on the surface of the sun. I'd been out playing all morning, and around lunchtime, I came in for a snack. My mom was doing dishes, and I was halfway through a bowl of cereal when the phone rang. I didn't think much of it, and answered without hesitation. "Hello?" I said, casual as ever. There was a pause, then a voice, teenage boy, kind of smug, said, "Hey, it's me, your summer buddy, 12:15, remember?" I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. I turned and looked at the clock. Sure enough, it was 12:15 on the dot. I didn't say anything. I just slowly hung up the phone, turned back to my cereal, and pretended none of it had happened.
Oh, man, that would be creepy. But I'm glad this boy stood his grounds and snapped back at the guy calling. And they stopped calling throughout the rest of the summer and while he was at school. But they had some nerve of calling back and saying something finally. I would have told the mom about what was going on with that phone call. I know she'll probably pick up the phone and be like, "Look, my son don't know you, and you need to stop calling here and harassing him," and see if they start calling again. But I would like to know who in the world it was. Somebody pranking him or someone that stalked him. Who knows?
Back when I was 14, I was in one of those chaotic phases where every adult felt like the enemy. School felt like prison. My mom didn't get me, and I'd already been arrested once for weed. That whole mess landed me in a court-ordered Narcotics Anonymous group that met every week at night in this run-down part of town, surrounded by halfway houses. My mom didn't really understand where she was dropping me off, but I never told her the full picture. Figured I could handle myself. And honestly, those meetings turned out to be one of the only places where I didn't feel judged. The guys there were older, had lived through some serious stuff, but they treated me with respect, gave real advice, and for once, I actually listened.
I mean, I get it. Every time you go to school, it'll feel like a prison until a certain time you have to go back home. And your parents might have some troubles with work and they don't understand what you say or what you're doing in life sometimes. They might take all their frustration out on you. But hey, you go to the meetings and you meet these guys that been through similar experiences like you, they'll get you on the right path, hopefully, to not keep doing this because you'll end up in further trouble down the line.
The meetings ran from 8 to 10 at night, and since the house didn't have any parking out front, my mom always picked me up at this gas station a couple blocks away. I'd gotten used to the walk, just a quick few turns, no big deal. One night, as the meeting wrapped up and I headed out like usual, I hit the end of the block and saw a group of men posted up on the porch of the last house before my turn. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them, and one had this little mirror balanced on his lap, like he was cutting something. As soon as they saw me, they started shouting out, asking my name, where I was going, what I was up to. I kept walking, not answering, hoping they'd lose interest.
I mean, if I said I'm not supposed to talk to strangers, then they'll probably get all wound up and be like, oh, we're not going to bother you. But they're probably up to something, and you better get out of there, get to your mom at the gas station quick before they try to entice you into doing something.
They didn't. A couple of them stood up and started coming toward me, still calling out like we were friends. One asked me what time it was, and something in the way he said it made my body react before my brain even finished processing it. I turned and bolted. I sprinted back the way I came, heart pounding in my throat, but I could hear them behind me, running too. I knew I wasn't going to outrun them all the way back to the house. That's when I saw a truck parked in a driveway with just enough clearance under it. I didn't think. I just dove underneath, laying flat on my stomach, trying not to even breathe. They were right there, feet from me, yelling and searching the yard like dogs that just lost the scent. One of them kicked through the bushes a few feet from where I was hiding and said, "Where the fuck did she go? Find her." I was frozen, expecting a hand to grab my ankle at any second.
Well, I can see why they were trying to talk to this kid, because it's a girl. And they probably wanted to grab her and get to know her like a prostitute, basically. And she runned off like that, made him mad. Thank God they didn't see you dive underneath that truck, because if they did, they would have been grabbing you by now.
After what felt like forever, I heard them give up and walk off, cursing. Once I was sure they were gone, I slid out, climbed the fence into the back of the meeting house yard, and ran inside like I was being chased by fire. A few guys were still sitting around in the living room. When I told them what had happened, everything changed. They stood up, some of them without saying a word, and stormed out the front door like they were going to war. The rest of the guys who stayed behind made sure I was safe and walked me back to the gas station where my mom was already parked, clearly worried. We told her what happened, and she drove straight to the police station to report it. Nothing ever came of that report, as far as I know, but I've got this strong feeling the guys from my group handled it their own way. I never saw those porch creeps again, and I never forgot the way those men, who barely knew me, stepped up and made me feel protected.
Thank God your grown men friends understood the situation and helped you out. Probably scared the crap out of them guys and told them never to come back around this area and bother their friend. But I'm glad that the other guys gave her an escort to meet up with her mom. So hopefully when she has to keep going to that meeting house, she wouldn't be scared anymore to walk by herself.
I used to have this chill summer routine a few years back when I was living in Montreal. At the time, I was crashing in an apartment near Mile End and working at a small shop in the Plateau, so I'd walk to and from work every day through these narrow little back lanes between the houses. If you've ever been in that part of the city during the warmer months, you know what I mean. Those cozy little alleys where every balcony seems to be full of someone sipping wine or hanging laundry, with cats slipping between the fences like they own the place. It honestly felt like the safest way to travel. Quiet, shaded, and filled with life. I'd even convinced myself that between the dog walkers, nosy neighbors, and barbecue smoke drifting through the air, nothing sketchy could really happen there. One afternoon I finished up at work early, probably around 4 or so, and decided to take my usual route home. No headphones, just soaking in the heat and the quiet hum of the city. I crossed Mont Royal like always, cut into the alley, and just let my mind wander. Everything looked totally normal. Not a soul in sight, except for someone yelling something way up on a balcony. I didn't catch any of it since my French is practically non existent, and they were pretty far away, so I didn't think much of it and kept walking. But a couple minutes later, just as I was approaching a backyard gate, this guy suddenly comes out and stops me, looking a bit rattled. At first, he's speaking rapid-fire French, which I clearly didn't understand. But when I looked confused, he switched to English and lowered his voice. "Hey, there's a guy following you," he told me, glancing behind me. "We've been watching from the balcony and he's been ducking behind sheds and trash bins, staying out of sight. It looked weird." I paused, trying to figure out whether he was being serious or maybe misunderstood something. I hadn't noticed a thing behind me. No footsteps, no shadow, nothing. But the way this guy was speaking wasn't dramatic or anything, just quiet, like he didn't want whoever was back there to hear. He pointed up to where his friend was still perched on a balcony, watching the alley like a hawk. I hesitated for a second, still unsure what to believe, but then the guy shouted something angry down the alley, something like, "Get the hell out of here." And just like that, this man, who I hadn't seen at all, sprang up from behind someone's garage wall, like literally just appeared. He had messy, shoulder-length hair, looked kind of strung out, and was wearing this heavy leather jacket even though it was easily 30 degrees out. We locked eyes for the briefest second, and there was something in his stare, something tight and furious and not all there. He bolted. The guy who warned me immediately took off after him, running back the way I'd come, but the dude vanished so fast it was like he'd melted into the alley. We stood there for a while, kind of unsure what to do next. It's not like there was a crime to report, just a terrifying near miss. The guy walked me back out to a main road nearby, and I thanked him again, probably more than once. I don't know what that man had planned, or how long he'd been trailing me, but I've never forgotten the way he was just there all of a sudden, like he'd been watching and waiting for a moment I didn't even know I was giving him. I still get a bit freaked out thinking how easily I could have kept walking and never known a thing.
Thank God somebody noticed that another strange guy was following you. But I got a feeling that he was probably seeing where you go and then he probably grabbed you. But if they didn't notice him, she would have been gone. But thankfully they scared him off and she got back to a main road path back to where she was going to. You just can't find nice people like that anymore that would just stand up and warn you like that. That's hard to come by nowadays. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Tales content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Corner channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap. And have a nice day, buddy.